Hello there and welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for joining me in another video. Now we're looking here today at this all-in-one Whoopstar board from BetaFPV. Really interesting little board running the Silverware firmware, but this is for a brushed quad, not a brushless quad, and that makes it a bit cheaper. It's around about half the price of an equivalent board that you'd buy for a brushless quad, so you can save yourself some money and have a really good flying experience. For those of you who know, Silverware is a really interesting firmware. It means that the board comes set up, you don't plug it into BetaFPV Lite or anything like that. It's all set up, ready to go, it's been tuned to perfection, flies really, really well. Everything's just done for you. So if you're not brilliant at tuning and you want to come to something that's been tuned by a professional, then you can't look any further than buying a Silverware board. Now we've had some out in the past. This one's flying on one. They're quite cheap, it's about £10 from Amazon. But all you can do is wire in the power up your all-in-one camera with a little VTX attached and your motors, and you're away. But they're very basic. They have no on-screen display, and because you have to supply your own camera and everything else, you could just fly this without the camera if you wanted to, and have it as a little line of sight quad. But it flies so well. But this new V2 board, well, this has improved things immensely, and it's added a few extra points that really help out if you want to modify and update, but also make it a really light build. So we're going to open up the box, see what we get in there, and then we're going to have a look at the board together. So let's have a look at that now. So what do we get inside the pack? Well, we get the board itself, very good, and we just get a little bag with some gummies and screws and other bits and pieces in. We're not really worried about that. We want to look at the board. So there it is. Let me straighten that out. Comes pre-soldered with a PH2 connector. Unfortunately, to me, it'll focus, but it doesn't look like it's a solid pin, so you might want to change that out. With a brush quad, it's not as important as having the solid pins on a brushless, but it still can improve things. So we won't, perhaps we'll keep this on for the time being, but if we want to change that, that's up to you. But it's pre-soldered, you're not concerned. So you can see it's got a linear whip antenna, so it has a VTX built in, and it still also has a Bayang style receiver in it as well. So this is it, there's no extra weight. You can attach a camera to this, and we'll look at that in a second, and you're away. So you're not having lots of heavy other bits and pieces on there like a VTX, all in one, which is brilliant. It has a OSD, the OSD Lite I think it's called, so that's really useful. Also on the bottom, as we look there, as you can see, we've got a connector to connect up USB, so you can update the firmware on your computer. And you can see there in the corner there, hopefully we can get this to focus, we've got some solder points there for soldering on a receiver, a S-bus receiver. So if you want to not use the Bayang protocols, well, you can solder on an S-bus receiver, and then you're away with that. You don't have to worry. But I'm going to use this Bayang because it saves weight, no extra receiver on there. Here is the connection for the camera. So you've got your 3 solder pads there, as you can see, for your ground, signal, and 5 volt. But it's the little connector on top, and that's where this comes into its own as regards to everything else they've produced, because you can fit it with this camera here, which is the CO1 camera. Comes with a nice canopy, a lot tougher and a lot more hard wearing than the original canopy, so really good that. But as you can see, the connector on here is the perfect size for there, so we can connect that up, no soldering at all. Motors just go in plugs as well, and you're away. So this is really good, especially if you're just sitting out and starting and learning, and you don't really want to do any soldering, or you're not very good at soldering. This is something you really want to look at, and bearing in mind the price, about £15–16 or so, depending on the exchange rate, that's really good. I'll put a links to all the products here in the description. So we've got the camera, we've got the canopy, we've got the flight control board. What else do we want to have with this particular frame? Well, we want to have a frame with that particular board even. So I'm going to go with one of these cockroach frames from Newbie Drone. These are really good frames. A bit heavier than the sort of old King Kong Tiny 6 style frame, but they're much stronger, much tougher, so they can take the abuse. So we've got a frame there, and to go with that we've got some nice orange as well HQ props, lightweight props with the 0.8mm shaft. So these will work really well, give us plenty of power and control, but nice and lightweight. So we've got that, and then we've just got some cheap motors. Now these were just some cheap ones from Amazon, Crazy Pony or someone like that. 19,000 kV for about £6. Not too bad. You can go and double that and get some official newbie drone or tiny whoop for a few pounds more motors. But for the time being, I'm just going to use these. And I probably will swap out once these ones are burnt out, because they do only have a certain lifespan, a couple of hours, and you tend to have problems. And some people have had them last a lot longer, but they only guarantee them for about 2 or 3 hours worth of continuous use. 2.5 minutes at a time, that's quite a few flights, but you will need to change these eventually. So when that happens, I'll change them out for some nicer motors. So there we are. We're going to do a build. I'll put that on at the end. But really nice flight controller, not very expensive. Only available from BetaFPV's website at the moment, but I'm sure it'll be available on Amazon and other vendors later on. But you get so much for just over £15. Really, really good. So we'll put this together, and then we'll have a look at the finished quad. So here's our finished quad. All looking very neat and tidy. Went together really, really easily. Everything plugged together. The only solder you might want to do is solder on a different connector. Perhaps solder on some little LEDs or something to make it look nice when you fly and when you're racing. So let's have a look at the weight, shall we? Bring in your scales. Coming in 20 grams, 21 grams. Not too bad. Not the lightest, but not the heaviest. I think it's probably down to the canopy and the frame as well. They're both quite heavy, so you could shave a bit of weight off if you took the canopy away. But I want the canopy for protecting it, so we'll leave that there. It shouldn't interfere with performance too much. So let's have a look at the OSD menu. Set this up. It's set up obviously by AIO protocol, and you get some nice flashy lights there. And then we initiate on our controller, and there we are. We're all set up and ready to go. So let's have a look. We'll move that over there. Hopefully bring this in, and you can see where we are. So there's our screen, as we can see. So we've got, that's telling us that it's disarmed at the moment. We've got level modes, we've got a flight time, a voltage of our LiPo, and Bayang. Don't think you can change that. Would be nice to be able to change that to, you know, your aircraft name, your flyer, you know, ID or something like that. But still, never mind. That has to stay like that. So we had to set up a couple of switches on this, switches 5 and 6. Switch 6 is the arm for some reason on this, I'm not quite sure why. So 2-position switch, armed, disarmed, armed, disarmed. The motors power up when you arm it, so you never get 0 throttle, which is quite useful. Some people don't like that, but quite useful, as you can see. So there's that. Then on switch number 5 we have our mode switch. So you can see here switching between level and acro quite easily. We don't have to do the stick commands that we used to do on the previous version of the Silverware brush little FC. So that's quite useful if you want to switch between the two quite quickly. Arm and disarm really easily. Now I put another switch on channel 7, and that switches to that race. So I think it's cutting a part of it off, but I think it says sort of race air mode or race acro, something like that. And what that does is a kind of strange mix between acro mode and angle mode. It's a bit weird to fly with. There's more explanation online, but there's not much information because this is quite new now. But yeah, we've got the information there that we need: our flight time, the mode we're in, whether armed or disarmed, and obviously our voltage. Really useful for something so cheap. I mean, we're talking £16 or so, or less, depending on the exchange rate for the controller. And then obviously you can then have to spend a bit of money on a camera, but you only need to buy the camera, whatever camera you happen to like. If you've got something from King Kong LDARC, you can use the little perhaps frame from the Tiny 6, something like that. Some lightweight propellers. I might try some 3-blade on this, I don't know. See how it flies with the 4, that should give it more grip, but maybe the 3-blade might help the flight time and things like that. So we'll see how that goes, but for the time being, yeah, looking really nice. I can't wait to have some fun flying this around the house, or around the flat even. So there's a little quad. I recommend you give it a try, especially if you want something that's relatively inexpensive, which this is. And there we are. So thanks so much for watching. Really appreciate your time. Hope this has been at least informative to you, and I'll say happy flying, because I'm looking forward to taking this maybe for a race or a fly around the local sports hall or something. So we'll see how it goes. But yeah, excellent. Thank you so much for your time, and take care. Bye bye.